Welcome, dear viewers, to a new episode of Dialogue Horizon. In this episode, we will try to cover the most important issues these days in Sudan. One of the most, actually not the most, but one of the most important issues is the peace agreement which was signed, ratified and signed in Juba in October, 3rd of October 2020. We are going to discuss one of the important articles of the agreement, which is the security arrangement. Security arrangement is the most important article or most important chapter actually in the agreement. So before we go in depth in the discussion, I have to welcome our friend Professor Manzoor Abdullah Manzoor. Professor Manzoor Abdullah Manzoor was the ex-director of the Peace Research Institute in the University of Khartoum, and now he is in the scientific research, Dean of Scientific Research in the University of Khartoum. Welcome, Professor Manzoor Abdullah Manzoor. First of all, I think the viewer or everybody, they want to know first, just in brief, what about this chapter or this chapter of the security arrangement in the Juba agreement? What are the most important features of this part of the peace agreement?
Well, Omar, thank you very much. Indeed, as you indicated, this is one of the most important parts of the peace agreement. Not only of the Juba peace agreement, but any peace agreement will necessarily have an article that deals with security arrangements. And this is self-evident because peace agreements are preceded with wars, with parties that fight each other, and it makes sense that when an agreement is reached, the first thing that they would like to address is how to deal with those who have been taking arms, especially from the part of armed movements. So for this reason, security arrangements are actually the first step in the implementation of any peace agreement. The first thing that they start with is the security arrangements. And just to give the viewers an idea about what is meant by security arrangements, this is basically a process that involves dealing with those armed groups in the well-known thing that's called DDR, disarmament, demobilization, and reintegration. This is a process that is an integral part of all the security arrangements. But it also involves integrating some of the officers and armies of those armed groups into the military establishment. Now, the process of doing all this is known as security arrangements.
Security arrangement.
Yeah, that is what is meant by security arrangements.
So the DDR is the demobilization, disarmament, and reintegration.
Right.
It looks as if that the reintegration is the most important part, or the most muddy, sticky part. Anyhow, we'll come to this later. But I want you to just give also the viewers, because the same arrangement, the same protocol of security, Sudan passed this some 10, 11, or 20 years ago, when the Nivasha, the CPA, the Comprehensive Peace Agreement, was ratified and signed on January 1995, I think.
2005.
2005.
Right.
2005. It also included. Can you compare how did it go? This security arrangement, was it successful? Implementation, was it successful or
not really, because the CPA, or the Comprehensive Peace Agreement, was done on a different model than the Juba Peace Agreement. We all recall that the CBA was having what was known as an interim period of 6 years. During that period, the SPLM kept its armies. They succeeded in creating what was known as the Joint Integrated Units, that comprised, personnel from Sudan Armed Forces and the SPLM, but that was a small unit. The larger part of the SPLM army was kept intact, and that is why it wasn't difficult for the SPLM to go for war in 2011, when the things didn't go well, when the South got its independence. Now, the very fact that the CBA involved the provision of having an interim period meant that during that period, the bulk of the army of the SPLM would continue as it is. It will not be integrated in the Sudan Armed Forces. But the Juba Peace Agreement did not have that clause, did not have an arrangement of an interim period.
Because just I remind you, because the Juba Agreement included for the first time, they gave the Southerners the right to secede.
The CBA.
In the plebiscite, the CPA.
That's
why
right.
It's illogical, not logical that they integrate and if they decide to secede.
Before the referendum.
Before the
Yes, if the referendum resulted in unity, then there would be a process of integrating SPLM into the Sudan Armed Forces.
Okay.
In the Juba Agreement, it was made explicitly that immediately after signing the agreement, the process of security arrangement should start.
Yes.
And I think it was mentioned that it should not be later than 3 months after the signing of the peace agreement.
3 months, yes.
That was what was mentioned in the agreement. So, but the reintegration that you mentioned was not, or is not about those who would like to continue as soldiers and officers. The reintegration is meant to reintegrate those ex-combatants who would like to go about their ordinary life.
Which one? This agreement, the Juba Agreement?
No, the DDR in general.
The DDR in general.
Exactly. The DDR means demobilization, disarmament, and reintegration. Reintegration here is meant to get those people back to where they were before joining the armed forces. And that's why they are actually provided with reintegration kits, with some money, with some things to live on. But the things that we talk about here are related to integrating some of the officers and armed persons who are eligible to be part of the Sudan Armed Forces.
Who are qualified.
Exactly, who are qualified to be part of the army. Yeah, exactly. So, but these two processes are actually done at the same time. You bring people, those who have been fighting, you categorize them, you see those who, because some people will tell you, I don't want to be a soldier, I want to go to my ordinary life.
Yes.
For this, you do an integration work for them. Those who are willing to continue as soldiers and who are eligible would be part of the Sudan Armed Forces.
Yes, Professor, I want to remind you something very interesting that occurred to my mind. One of the best agreements in Sudan, which was fully implemented and it held for 10 years, was the agreement between Nimeri and Joseph Lago in 1972.
Addis Ababa Agreement.
Addis Ababa Agreement. It included this security element and the integration, the DDR. I do remember the process went very smooth. Many soldiers, including Joseph Lago himself, the leader, he was part of the National Army, the one army, and it went all the way for 10 years. And I remember not all of them, they joined the army, some to the police force, some to the civil service.
Exactly. Precisely. This is what I was trying to say, that if the parties are willing, committed, this process should go smoothly, because all the time you get some people who would like to continue as soldiers, others who would like to go for a civilian life, Others would like to join the police or other security forces, and so forth. The point is that this is something that should be done immediately. It really shouldn't be delayed at all, by all means, because, and this is a point that I repeatedly said here in this show, that the security arrangements are the last negotiated bit of any peace deal. But it is the first part that the implementation will start with. You see? And that is why you cannot think of implementing a peace agreement without starting by the security arrangements. It's just unthinkable.
Okay.
Unthinkable.
Yeah, of course, yes, it's all logical.
Yeah.
So, okay, from what you said, what you have said, now you mentioned that according to the Juba agreement, the process of the DDR and the security arrangement should have started almost 2 years ago, after 3 months.
Right.
In your view, what is the reason for this abnormal delay? Why it's delayed all this time?
Well, abnormal is actually the right word, to use here, because it was really very surprising that almost 2 years later, or 1 year and a half, the process didn't start. And we recall that few months after the signing of the UPP agreement, there was a talk about the security arrangements, and the government at the time was saying that we did not start this process because of financial problems.
Financial?
Yes, that was a justification. I do remember that the head of the Sudan Sovereign Council, General Burhan, was quoted in one of his statements saying this.
What are the main points for calling the cost, making the cost high? What are
well, first you need
cost,
to...
Why the cost of reintegration is high, and it's becoming a hurdle. Now it's becoming a hurdle on the implementation of the agreement, because without money you cannot... so is money an important factor in your...
Well, money, it is important. There is no question about that. And what the process involves first is to regroup those armed groups in certain locations. And let's not forget the fact that we are not talking about one armed group. We are talking about several armed groups that are scattered all over Darfur. They need to be regrouped. Some sort of military bases or barracks is needed to accommodate these people, and allocations are to be made for these people.
Are there groups still taking arms other than Al Hilwa and Abdul Wahid? Are there other groups not included, did not sign the Juba? Other than Hilwa and Abdul Wahid?
Not really.
Not really.
Even if there are these groups, these are small groups, small insignificant ones. But it doesn't matter. How small a group is. It would be a nuisance. Any 3 or 4 people mounting a pickup truck with some guns, they can cause a lot of damage and havoc. Yeah. But the thing is, the financial part was set as something that's responsible for the delay. As an observer, I said many times that this is not convincing at all.
Not convincing?
Not convincing. And the proof of this is that when things were almost out of control, the government started the process of security arrangements. Like just less than a month ago, they started it. They started building a military base to the east of Al-Fashir town, and they start to, the process of regrouping. But unfortunately, this took place after the damage has already been done. We have seen the problems in West Darfur, the killings that happened in January, April, and in December in Jabal Moon. All these happened in West Darfur state. Before that, we saw the Kolge incident where many people got killed. And recently, we saw the attacks that happened to the UNIMIT compounds, to the WFP warehouses.
So this is
all these were, to me, direct results of the delay in the security arrangements. And I'm saying this because simply you have people who are having guns, who are there, who don't know what their fate looks like, who don't know when the process starts, who don't have money.
So they became desperate.
Absolutely, they become desperate, and that's why they can attack and they can make, these terrible things that happen.
So they were forced to attack to get something to eat. Maybe okay.
Yeah, and also one of the things that we shouldn't forget is that the armed groups themselves have a lot of challenges and problems. They don't have money. Even administratively, to administer these big numbers of people, young people with guns, this is very challenging.
Very challenging, very.
Absolutely, and they many of these armed groups actually don't have the capacities to manage this. And I think this is also one of the points that should not be forgotten.
This is very dreadful.
Yeah.
Yes, a person with a gun, and you put him to the psychological point of nothing to lose. It's very, very dreadful.
Right.
Very dreadful.
Right. Right.
So you think that the start, the delay, but okay, last week or few days ago, both leaders, the military leaders, General Burhan and General Hamid,
They were there. They were
there in fashion, and they said they will start. They will start the implementation of the peace agreement, the security arrangement. Do you think that the visit was successful, and will it be? Because immediately after the visit, another attack came to the UNAMID.
Yeah. You know that was precisely why I said that these arrangements started after the damage has already been done.
After the damage.
Yeah, because a lot have happened. Killings happened, looting happened. And then the two leaders in the Sovereign Council, Burhan and Hemeti, were there. The visit, I see it as a very important gesture that the government is, at the highest level, is very committed and sincere about this. This is good, of course. And then one of the things that they also tried to stress was the necessity and need to have the arms of these armed groups outside of the major cities. This is one of the things, because the last terrible incident that happened in Al Fashir, which is the capital of North Darfur State.
North Darfur State.
And this means that the likelihood of having fatal incidents when we have these armed groups stationed in the town, the likelihood of this is quite big. And that was why I think it was a good decision that these armed groups should be taken out of the town. I fully support this.
Taken out of the towns.
Absolutely, because their presence in the town with all the civilian, this is quite dangerous. If anything happens, then you will get a lot of fatalities.
Definitely. Yeah.
And it's logical that the arms, are taken outside. They should be put in certain locations, and definitely the location that was constructed in the east part of Al Fashir, which is called Jadid al-Sail. That's where they started the security arrangement. They should be taken there at least, So my position is that this is a good decision, it's a good idea, but it will not work if the security arrangements were not taken to the logical conclusion. This process is started, it's slow, it has to be speeded up so that things will move quickly.
Unlikely to stop because of the short of money.
Our fear is that might be the case. The government might again tell that, well, we started the process, but we don't have enough money. And one of the things that Sudan missed is the support from the international community, which unfortunately stopped, and it doesn't seem like it's forthcoming, And that could have helped. But now that you don't have the international support, you have to use your own resources.
Which we don't have, actually. This is a big problem. But after the visit, And okay, let us go say that a security arrangement will go all the way to the end. As you know, you don't have now one national army. Like how can we integrate them in the rapid support force or the national army? This is another issue. Plus, I think there is another fourth front. It's called Tamazuj. They are not included in this, and they have forces and they have troops. What about those? That's why I asked you about the signatories of Juba. These Tamazuj are not part of the Juba.
Well, the Tamazuj group was indeed a signatory of the Juba Peace Agreement.
It was.
Oh yes,
okay.
yes, they signed the Juba Peace Agreement.
Okay.
So I don't understand how they could not be part of the security arrangements.
Who took them out of the security?
I have no idea, and I really fail to understand the whole story that's developing now, to the effect that Tamazuj seems to be sidelined or marginalized,
Yes.
and they start to talk some tough language that you know, if you marginalize us, then a big problem is going to happen. So but also let us not forget the fact that this whole Tamazuj thing was surprising to people in the country, because all of a sudden they appeared as part of the Juba peace process.
Yes.
They were not part of the negotiations, but when the stages of the agreement were in their final, you know,
Who are they? Can you give
parts?
the viewers? Can you yes, many people are not sure. But I am one of them. I don't. Who are they? Who are this group and why Tamazuj?
I don't know.
Mixture or what?
I don't know.
What
But some I saw some reports linking this Tamazuj to the opposition of Riek Machar.
Riek Machar. But not sure. Not.
No, I cannot confirm these reports. But that is what one thread in the stories about Tamazuj. In all cases, this is a very mysterious, a very dubious movement. We really don't know details about it, and as I said, it suddenly appeared in the Juba Peace Agreement as a signatory.
Oh, then they have the right. If they sign, then they have the right to be part of the process, the reintegration process.
This is one argument, but also let us not forget the fact that you have the tracks who signed the Juba Peace Agreement, and they have nothing to do with the security arrangements. So, and this is actually, as a matter of fact, one of the complexities or complications in the Juba Peace Agreement. You know, that you brought these different things in the table, you made them as part of the agreement, and they have very different trajectories.
So you think Juba has some loopholes?
Of course, it does.
Full of loopholes, which
full of problems.
Definitely it will
full of the full of loopholes, full of problems, especially the tracks.
Especially the tracks.
You know, it's understandable, the provisions for the Blue Nile, South Kordofan and Darfur, this is clear.
Yes.
But for the rest of the tracks, very problematic. We have seen this in the East.
Who included them? Who? It's something weird. It's definitely weird. I don't know, because these people.
The thing is, the Juba Peace Agreement was negotiated under the Sudan Revolutionary Forces, the Jabha Sawriya.
Yes.
And this includes a lot of people, including the tracks of the north, the track of the east, and the track of the center.
But the north and the east, they never took arms. Oh, throughout you are talking about something you are calling it peace agreement. When you talk about peace, the opposite of peace was armed struggle. These people in the north, especially in the north, we all of us in the north, from Halfa to Khartoum, not to Khartoum, to Kosti, down to Kosti, this area did not have any groups carrying arms, even the east.
Yeah, that is true.
Why these tracks?
You see, that is precisely the thing, that because the negotiation was done between the transitional government, represented by the negotiators, Dagalo and Kabashi and Ataishi, and the Sudan Revolutionary Forces, because it's an umbrella that brings together different groups. Some of them have arms, some don't, like at Tumhaju, you know. And that was why, because those smaller groups that don't have armies, they didn't want to get out with nothing. And for this reason, they got away with the tracks. And now we have all these problems, you know. If it was confined only to the Blue Nile, Darfur, and the South Kordofan, it would have been understandable.
Yes.
Because this is a clear case of
areas
of conflict and arms and all of that. You see?
Yes.
And part of why there is a delay in the implementation of your agreement is precisely the issue of these tracks. Because by the time the government is done with the East, the problem has already started in Darfur. And now we see also problems happening in the north, although this is for a totally different reason.
But do you agree with me that the creation of the tracks, indirectly or indirectly, led to the blockage for the first time in the history of Sudan, blocked the two main lifelines. One was first Tariq, the East, due to the track, because he was objecting those who signed on behalf of the East. He's saying that they are not representing the East. That's why he blocked for 45 days.
Sure.
Now, also the North, for the
is doing the
time,
same.
Doing the same.
Precisely. This is one of the direct consequences of having these tracks.
Yes.
No question whatsoever
no question about it.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree.
Absolutely.
I agree. That's
so instead of contributing to solving problems, actually including the tracks in the peace agreement, created
new problems.
New problems that are quite serious. That would not only affect the implementation of the peace agreement, but it will affect the whole country. As we have seen in the East.
Now it is affecting the whole country. Most closer. Not only, even Egypt now is involved.
Sure, absolutely.
We never know what will be the reaction of Egypt if things protracts to something which threatens the economy of the. You never know what will happen.
No, you're right. And for this reason, I have always been saying that it is to the benefit of everybody,
yes,
that the security arrangements start immediately, sincerely, because this is the building block for the implementation of the peace agreement.
Okay.
You know, and of course, it is a very important step. It's a building block, but it is not sufficient in itself, because when you are done with this, then you pave the way for additional steps. And the peace agreement actually spoke about financial pledges of like almost 10 billion to Darfur in 10 years.
Yeah. For the rehabilitation,
repatriation,
people who were affected by the war, who lost their lands. This is the most expensive part of the agreement.
Absolutely. So, but the point is that when you succeed in the security agreements, then you give hope. You know, we would believe that indeed the agreement is in the right track, is going well, and we will start now looking for funds to fulfill the rest of the agreement. But if you have the arrangements, the security arrangement is stalled, then automatically you don't have anything else. You see?
Nothing can be done.
That's the point.
Actually, this is very, 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 very serious, very dangerous. Okay, Professor Manzul, Abdullah Manzul, if we just want to evaluate the effect, you mentioned that it will not affect those, it will affect even the whole country and the stability of the country. Do you think that because it seems that some of the forces which are calling for the reintegration, and the government is skeptical or unwilling or unable, because they don't have money to do this process, and it seems that they are going to give an ultimatum or something like this. What would be the effect if the government continues to fail in this security arrangement? If it continues like this, without reintegration,
I am one of those who do not tend to blame the government all the time. The armed groups also have responsibility. Some of these armed groups don't know even the number of their armies. This is something that should have been done
From the beginning.
from the beginning before signing the agreement. Each and every one of these armed movements should have known
Yeah.
the total number of its personnel.
Yeah.
Now we have been following stories to the effect that some of these armed groups are recruiting people to inflate the numbers of their personnel. And this is one of the challenges that also face the security arrangements. So the government is not the only part to blame. Others also have responsibilities. In all cases, however, the delay of the implementation of the security arrangements would lead to conflicts. Actually, it will lead to disastrous situations. We have already seen this. The delay has resulted in problems that happen in West Darfur state. Now problems are creeping into other states. North Darfur has already witnessed the attacks on the UNAMID and the WFP. And also just after the Burhan and Hemeti's visit, there was a clash between the government forces and one of these armed group forces, where some people got killed, others injured. And we cannot guarantee that this will not happen again in light of the delays that are happening, and also not the least, the whole situation in the country is actually quite problematic, unstable. We don't have a PM, we don't have a cabinet, we have people taking to the streets all the time. The situation is quite serious.
Yeah, sure.
And the delay in the security arrangements is going to
worsen,
add up.
Add up to the gravity of the situation.
Absolutely.
But it seems that like a vicious circle, because this will aggravate and will trigger maybe violence or resurfacing of some, as it's happening in Darfur now. People, the patients, when they run out of patience, definitely they will use their arms. They still hold the arms.
Yeah, that's right.
So when they reach a certain point, they will the whole situation will completely go out of control.
No, that is true, and that is one of the
very dangerous.
One of the reasons why I am a bit worried about the slow pace of implementing the agreement, the slow pace even in the first step of implementation, which is security arrangements. And I really call upon everybody who is part of this to be responsible, to take their responsibility seriously, because the situation doesn't actually allow for these delays, and therefore has already suffered enough. And let us not forget the fact that the situation kept getting from bad to worse after the signing of the agreement.
I started
West Darfur state in particular suffered a lot.
Yes.
We have hundreds of people who killed in a Geneina, in these IDP camps. Then of late we have the Jabal Moon incident that is still unresolved. Then, as I mentioned, things started to spill over. Now we have problems in North Darfur, and there were already some issues in Western Darfur state.
And don't forget
spreading.
The West, not Sudan. The West Sudan is also the situation in Chad
and Central
Africa. This is the governance and the political system and the financial. It's also both of these two countries neighboring Sudan, sharing this border, the western border with Sudan. They are not stable.
And don't forget the Libyan factor.
The Libyan factor also, yes.
And further to the west, the Boko Haram.
Okay.
So you have a very volatile situation. You have a very serious situation. You have a spread of arms. And actually, today I read a report by the UN saying that in Darfur, the sales of arms went as serious as having anti-aircraft missiles being sold in the region.
Anti-aircraft, huh?
You see?
Coming from Libya.
Exactly. And this is something that further urges the Sudan government, because the government actually bears the overall responsibility to speed the process of security arrangement, to speed the process of regrouping the armies of these different armed groups in certain locations so that the process starts. And you cannot think of having a peaceful situation or control who has arms if you don't do the security arrangements.
If you don't do security arrangements.
Of course. Now, if you do the security arrangements, it will become clear that only the armed forces and the security forces will have the monopoly of arms. But when this is not in place, then everybody can have arms. And this will complicate the situation.
A very dangerous situation.
It is.
But also, okay, now we have the agreement not implemented because of so many other reasons since October 2020 till today, almost 2 years, nothing happened, and nothing is seen in the near horizon that it will come. Among this, all of this is shrouded by the international community. It's just watching. They stopped. They closed their valves. Any moment is coming to Sudan, and still the situation, the political situation in the country is not stable. So it seems that this is leading. That's why I want to ask you. I remember when we started, you said you started looking at the empty
part of the cup.
Unfortunately, as far as I know, you always look at the
half full.
Half full.
That's
now
right.
You started to the.
No, that's right.
Why?
It's really, because of these complexities. We are having an escalating situation in Darfur. We are having a very tense political situation in the whole country.
Yes.
Now we are having more than 3 months without a cabinet, without a prime minister.
Nothing appearing.
Nothing appears in the horizon that this is going to take place soon. I think the only hope we are having now is that the consultations done by the chief of UNITAMS would, result in something that would take us forward. But else, as you rightly said, the international community has stopped its support, the financial support, and from the past couple of years, it became very clear that without a significant support from the international community, our economy cannot get into the right track. Unfortunately, this is a sad reality. We have a lot of resources, but without the technical and direct financial support, without debt relief, we cannot go anywhere.
Without protecting this, now the smuggling is becoming commonplace. Smuggling of real, like gum Arabic, like gold, smuggling, which is completely out the financial system of the country, the official system. Now the business is booming of smuggling. Every now and every day you hear about something gold and gum Arabic and sesame and livestock itself, no control because the security in the country, the whole security. Now the armed, those who are those who are supposed to be looking after the smugglers and the criminals, they are involved now in the upheaval in the streets of Khartoum and the big towns. Nobody now is caring. Nobody. That's why I agree with you that you are looking at the empty part of the cup. That the security now, can you realize that if you look here in Khartoum and different big towns, they are only looking for the security, the intelligence for the leaders.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. You see, and that is why I am starting to be quite pessimistic, because all the terrible things you mentioned, looting and smuggling, happen, and they are becoming a commonplace thing.
Yeah.
People talk about them, the authorities know about them, yet they don't do anything about them. And that's the dangerous part of it. When the security establishment become, in a state of apathy, of knowing that terrible things happen, yet they don't do anything about it.
It's very bad.
This is a terrible situation. And unfortunately, we are, if not already there, we are very close to get there.
It's very, actually we are there because you are right. Now, I know the security, not only the security, I mean those who carrying the arms, the intelligence. Intelligence in any country is that's why they call it intelligence. It's the most important branch of the governance, because it gives the actual the information about because intelligence is outside, external and internal.
Right.
All regimes, you remember, all regimes they have external and internal sections of they put and the alarm. They give the alarm to the leaders of anything which will is going to happen. Now people, nobody is thinking of this. Nobody, even the security forces, police, for example. Police, they have the investigation. They have the federal the investigation which they used to be very efficient. They can pick any criminal or any crime. They just disclose it and they know in a few hours maybe. The intelligence which is supposed to alarm the people, the leaders about the activities of foreigners or the activity of smuggling, now they are all down looking to the demonstrations.
Well, you have a divided society, you have a divided country, and that is why instead of safeguarding the borders of the country, rounding up those who smuggle these things, these security forces are busy rounding demonstrators.
Yes.
And that is a very sad reality, you know, regardless of who is right and who is wrong. You know, this is what is happening now. And that is why the authorities are busy.
Busy, yes, around the bush, actually.
Exactly.
They are not inside. They don't know.
No. And I'm worried that this is going to continue for a long time if we don't arrive at a political settlement that would solve this impasse. We will continue to have our resources looted. We will continue to have smuggling. And we might also continue to be a ground for international intelligence work.
Yeah.
And this is what's happening now.
What's happening, actually, is happening. But because Professor, the very important factor that the security and peace of the country, whether it was the peace agreement signed in Juba or any other peace agreement, it seems that the international community, especially America, is really concerned about Sudan in particular, although there are other areas in the globe boiling, firing, like Yemen, like Libya, like still they are dealing with those parts and Ukraine and Russia, but still they are showing their concern on the stability and security of Sudan, which means that they will not start a real step unless we do enough from our side. We do enough. What we do is that we have to come to a conference.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you. The international community is indeed very concerned.
Why concerned?
Why concerned? Because of what's happening in the Horn of Africa generally.
Okay.
We have Ethiopia in deep trouble, and now Sudan in another trouble.
West.
We have other issues, but you cannot have, two big countries like Syria and Sudan having problems. Something has got to be done.
Okay.
Absolutely, there's no question about this. And that is why we see the US and its allies are quite concerned. We see different statements and all of that. But again, this is our own business.
Yeah.
If we are, as Sudanese, fail to do our homework, believe me, nobody would do it for us.
Others cannot do it for you.
Others cannot do it for us. This is our own, problem. We have to settle it, and the support of others would come as a complementary support. But we should not look at the international community as it's, as our savior, or that it will do for us something that we should do ourselves. This is not going to happen. I think we have to be realistic.
Yeah, we need a
across the board. The
Right.
government, the Sovereign Council, the opposition, FFC, whoever, this is our responsibility. We have to do it. Nobody would do what we should do.
And so, without this, what you are saying, that we come to a consensus, or without this, the Juba agreement or any agreement cannot hold, and the failure of implementation will make a vicious circle of violence started.
Well, failing to, we may say a lot of things about Juba peace agreement. We may disagree about a lot of, issues like the question of tracks. but failing to implement it, at least in the three areas, in Darfur,
Therefore,
in the Blue Nile, in the Nuba Mountains, this is going to cut hell loose. It's going to create hell. And we already started to see part of this in Darfur.
it started. It always starts like this.
Yeah, it starts small, and when the government doesn't really take it seriously, then things would, step out of control. And my fear is that this is something that has already started to take place.
It started already started to take place.
Yeah.
This is very serious. Okay.
It is.
From what we have a few minutes, but still, I have the question, which is what is happening, especially in the civilian component. It is in my mind complete disarray now. It seems that they cannot agree, and now the control of the streets is no longer under the freedom of forces or under the parties. It is under these committees, these resistance committees. They start to become well organized. They have pyramid structure of resistance groups in the small localities, then the province state. Now they are organized, and they succeeded, and they proved to be successful in mobilizing the streets. So in your mind, how can with this complete agreement between the factions, the parties, especially the Communist Party is no longer in the freedom and forces, the forces of freedom and forces, they are not welcome by the resistance forces. So it seems creating some.
Yeah, regrettably, what all you said is correct. The civilian part is completely fragmented. It's in a total disarray. Some of them don't even talk to each other. We have seen that the Communist Party refused to meet the delegation from the FFC a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
The resistance committee are strong. They mobilize the street. But then there is a complete lack of a political horizon. Without having the civilian component, having its act together, it would be very difficult to see any credible negotiation with those who are holding power.
The military.
Absolutely. And this is one of the things that is going to create a problem, to create an impasse. Luckily, one of the things that Volker Perez, the head of UNITAMS, is doing is mapping these different positions. I think the consultations ended yesterday.
You said ended yesterday.
Yes, and we are looking forward to a report that will come out from Volker Perez to tell us who is having what opinion. And then from there, a strategy to deal with the situation could be established. In all cases, the different civilian forces need to put their act together. Resistance committees, FFC, political parties. I saw also yesterday the Umma party came out with a statement.
Yes.
And that, to my mind, could be the base around which, a consensus can be built. No matter how, fragmented these civilian forces are, they don't stand a chance if they don't come together, if they don't agree on a minimum ground, to negotiate with the military. I really don't see any way out except coming together.
But it seems that coming together is a little bit, it seems that to me is not reachable. But what can we, now the UNITAM director, Volker, he wrapped up his consultations, and he will definitely find diversities, a lot of diversity between the groups he met. He must strike a balance, which means he must eliminate some of the factions. He cannot
Well,
reconsider.
well, UNITAM's leader said it very clearly, time and time again, that his role is a facilitator.
Facilitation.
You know, although I have my doubts, I don't
No,
think
me
that
too, me
I
too.
don't think the UNITAM should only be a facilitator. I think it's going to set the
He
stage,
set the stage, yes.
and that's why I'm curious to read the report that will come out of these consultations. You know, to see, because what I am sensing is that the UNITAMs might come out with a roadmap
Roadmap, yes.
based on the consultations that it carried out. It might tell us that we believe this road should be followed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, dear Professor Manzoor Abdullah Manzoor. We covered a very nice hour. Thank you, dear viewers, for being with us in the last hour. We hope to see you next week in a different issue in Dialogue Horizon. Thank you and bye.